It is San Francisco 49ers state of the franchise. Jason Aponte, I'm Brad Graham. We got a lot of things to talk about today because we already know. We're going to get into it all right after this. Let's not mess around. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're going to get into it all right now. All right, what's going down, gang? Jason, a lot of stuff popping around the San Francisco 49ers. How are you doing, though, before we get into all that?
I'm fine. Woke up looking for the broccoli hockey. I'm sorry, couldn't help myself. But no, first of all, I just want to say it's good to see you, man, on this week. And, happy Thanksgiving to you and your family and everybody who's watching.
Of course. And to yours as well. Let's get into it. A lot of injuries today. So let's start with the biggest one. Let's not bury the lead. Let's talk
Mhm,
about Fred Warner
mhm.
revealing that he has a fractured ankle that occurred week 4 against the Patriots, and he has to get pain injections
Mhm.
before every single game. And I think it makes sense to kind of what we've seen, right?
Yeah, I think we all surmised that there was something wrong. Whether he's banged up, we know that he was injured in that game. He left that game and didn't finish it. So I think the smart idea was, yeah, he's obviously going through something now. Fractured ankle is something that's completely, just it just adds to the legend of Fred Warner. So yeah, it's just been that type of season, and you just hope that he can play through it and he doesn't re-injure it further. But I think that's going to be the crux of this discussion today is what to do going forward. How do you view things going forward? But Fred, you're gonna have to take him off the field, kicking and screaming, and it's just a testament to the leader that he is, man. He's just different.
Yeah, I mean, I think it also puts into perspective, like, of course, Jason, we've talked a ton about contracts and getting paid and like all those things. And I think this kind of exemplifies one of the reasons why these guys fight so hard for these contracts and why they try to get everything that they're worth, because they're putting life and limb on the line. I know it sounds a little bit dramatic, but at the end of the day,
It doesn't. A,
these
a a college football player just passed away on the field today. It does not sound at all. If an Alabama
is
A and
that what
M
that
an
was?
an Alabama A&M player literally died from playing football. So you're not being dramatic.
What happened? Can you fill me in on that? I
I'll
saw
I'll
something about it, but it was
mhm,
like we were in the middle of doing all the updates, so I
mhm.
didn't even get to see.
So,
Um,
hold on, I have it right here. Alabama A&M's Burnett Jr. dead at 20 after in-game head injury.
whew, shoot. Wow, that is absolutely terrible. I had no idea what the backstory was behind it. So it actually happened from something on the field.
Yes. It says
Wow.
transferred to Alabama A&M from Grambling State suffered a severe head injury during a collision when A&M and Alabama State faced off from a big rivalry game in late October.
Wow, that is unfortunate to hear. But I guess, just kind of
You
speaks to exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, and you're not being dramatic at all. But continue. I'm sorry. I just wanted to let you know you're not being dramatic. Literally, anytime that you strap up, it could be, the last time you walk, or that's these guys are the modern day gladiators.
Absolutely. So again, that's why I think both you and tend to kind of side with players going after and getting whatever they're worth. And we're always going to side with that because I think we have the ability to rationalize these things and what Fred's going through. And again, that young man, just devastating to hear that about him and his family, especially around this time of the year. So yeah, it's a crazy scenario, obviously, for the 49ers because we have kind of been wondering what has been going down, with Fred, how he's been playing, and sure enough, and it's very similar to Charvarius Ward, and some of the things that we didn't know was going on behind the scenes. And I think again, I think it's important I think it rebalances us a little bit to be like, okay, this season it's just not going well. And we can call it what it is, and we can be critical and we can point it out, but there's a line, right? That we don't need to cross. We can talk about where these guys need to improve or where it's failing and just call it what it is without going over the top and being crazy about it, right?
Yeah, again, it's enough data. These things are going on. Obviously, you have the injuries to Fred, Trent, Bosa, Purdy, McCaffrey, coming back, Ayuk out. It's Dre Greenlaw's finally
No
coming back.
Hargrave.
That's like, yeah, Javon Hargrave out for the year. The good news is that Dre Greenlaw's coming back. When do these injuries and all of these things pile up to a point where you just can't overcome them, right? You can control what you can control, which is probably my biggest complaint with the 49ers is that you can't control injuries, but you can
Right.
control the things on the field that they're not controlling. That's my complaint. But it's not writing on the wall anymore. It's spray paint, it's graffiti. It just kind of feels like adversity is one thing. This is the NFL. Nobody's going to feel sorry for you. Injuries happen. A lot of teams are banged up. A lot of teams are playing and they continue to go. They don't really give you, time off or anything like that just because you have injuries. But how much can one team take in one season? Going back to the off season and everything. And now you're not just having injuries, you're having impact injuries. You're not having, oh, we got a starter out, no, starting quarterback, edge, best left tackle in the world, one of your best receiver probably, and he, lost his season. Your interior defensive lineman, like it's just becoming like it's too much and time is dwindling right now. It just feels bad.
Yeah, I mean, we heard today that, Trent Williams is on like a scooter, like he's not even walking around the locker room. And it's like, we got taken for a run a little bit. We had the Adam Schefter report, in the wee hours of the night saying, oh, it feels optimistic Trent Williams will be able to go. And then right before the game, we find out a little bit more doubt on the doubtful side. And now he's not even putting weight on it, which could also just be something to help him heal faster. So I think that's important to kind of know. But you have that going on. Brock Purdy isn't throwing today. He throw
Mhm.
1 to 2 passes per multiple reports, and then just kind of went through the motions of practice. At least what was open to the media. Nick Bosa didn't practice today. Not Travarius Ward's a full go now,
Mhm.
but Diamador Lenore, he's dealing with a knee injury. He doesn't practice today. Dominic Cooney's dealing with a shoulder injury. He doesn't practice today. Aaron Banks is in the concussion protocol. Um, and again, we just talked about the news that just got unloaded with Fred. It's at a certain point, injuries are what they are. And that's not even including the guys that are like we already talked about that are out. So um I hate to invoke it, but
Mhm.
little 2020 vibes a little bit, would you say?
I mean, we've been feeling that way all like going into the season, right? With the whole thing of, like we already had injuries starting early on in the offseason. You have the holdout process, all that stuff. It was whispered about then. I don't see how you really can't there's so many parallels. I think the one thing that, obviously 2020 was just a litany of injuries, but man, even with those injuries, the defense played very well. Kerry Hyder hooped and they were very competitive,
Mhm.
even at time like it's just that there's the parallels are just injury for 2020. This
Yeah.
season, it feels like they can't even just play competent football. And it's not because of the injuries. And I don't think that the team is all the way in this position because of who they're missing. Obviously, a lot of it is. But unfortunately, that team at times, oh, here we go. That's all right. um, but that was good. That's good to lighten the mood. But like again, just the execution part, right? Like whoever's out there
Uh,
is out there, right? It's always been
right.
next man up, and other teams are having the same issue, but they're not just forgetting how to play football in all three phases, and that's the frustrating part is that regardless of who's on the field, you're just watching the same mistakes over and over again, which leads you to believe that it's not a talent issue, it's not who's available issue, it's just who these 49ers are. And in 2020, at
Yeah.
least that defense was going and they continued. Obviously they had Robert Saleh as a defensive coordinator. That's something that's a piece of this puzzle too as well. But it's just a little bit different this season.
Yeah, so I think we'll definitely get into identifying where we think the 49ers are struggling the most. But you had tweeted something out the other day, and it was kind of crazy. Uh, Cynthia says, top 10 draft pick, here we come. And I wanted to talk about this a little bit because it was pretty interesting. You had tweeted out that the 49ers are one game out of first place in the NFC West right now as we stand on Wednesday, November 27th. But they are also, what did you say? One game out
One game out from a top 10 pick.
From a top 10 pick. I've never experienced the 49ers being in this place before. It's a pretty rare place to be in where your team that has Super Bowl aspirations, expectations, whatever you want to say, aren't meeting them. They're last in division, but one game out of first and one game out of being a top 10 pick. I asked, I did a poll on my story on Instagram and had thousands of votes. And I'll ask you guys in the chat, what would you guys rather have? Would you rather have a top 10 pick, or would you rather make a playoff run, try to get to the top of the NFC West and sneak into the playoffs and do some damage? Let me know in the chat. I want to see, because I want to say I was surprised by the results, Jason, but I also want to say I'm not surprised because it was 51% voted for the top 10 pick opposed to the playoffs. So typically polls can be pretty one-sided, but the fact that it was pretty close, but it still tipped in favor of getting a top 10 pick, which means rest your guys, don't rush them back, fine with the losing from here on out. That's a pretty interesting, to me, it's a pretty interesting to see the fan base kind of be at this point when we had Super Bowl aspirations heading into week 1. Wouldn't you say?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a few ways to look at this. Okay, so firstly, the idea of tanking on purpose. Well, the good news is the 49ers don't have to tank on purpose because they're trying in these football games and they still are in this position. So maybe they don't have to change anything. Okay, 1. 2, NFL football players do not tank. This is why.
Right.
When you are someone who is employed and you have a job, and your job is based on how much good tape you can put out there so you can keep a job or go somewhere else to play, playing poorly on purpose will assure you of not getting a job. So you've got that to contend with. Coaches have to try to do the best that they can because they're building their resume as well. If people start to know that you're pulling the plug and you're outwardly coaching poorly on purpose, then you're not going to have a job. So this is a results-driven business. But guys need to be able to put good film together. And they, at the end of the day, let's put it to like this. Let's say you're a fringe player on this roster. You're one of the 50, 51, 52, 53 guys. With all these injuries that are coming up, you get to play. Now, you get your shot to show yourself, and you get to show what you're made of, and you get your opportunity, and then you play poorly on purpose when everyone knows the situation with the 49ers and they know that you're doing this on purpose. Now, let's do this. If you are one of the players who are trying to help this 49ers team get to a top 10 pick and you're tanking on purpose, you're not going to be on the team next year to enjoy that player that you helped them secure. So the interesting thing is this. To sum it all up, you always want to try. And the 49ers right now are one game out. So they can't fold up, right? They're one game out. They're not going to fold up. But if you are worried about them ruining their chance, I'll be honest with you, and this is going to come off badly. They've been trying, and they're still in this position. They have been trying. They have been trying through 11 games, and they're 5-6. So, yes, you still have an opportunity, but yes, you don't have to necessarily tank. You might just have to keep just doing what you're doing. Look in the camera, say, we're angry. We're getting after it this week. We feel the urgency, and then just go out there and, play your game, and then you end up with a loss. So you can try, but they've been trying, and they're still in this position, so they don't have to necessarily tank. And players don't tank, coaches don't tank. It's just not how they're built. And you especially can't tank when you're that close to a playoff spot, regardless of whatever we believe the chances are.
Yeah, I think to your point, the thought process is fundamentally different between fans and
Mm-hmm.
players, and it always will be. That's
Mm-hmm.
just how it is, because just like you said, their livelihoods are on the line, and we talk about it all the time. And your tape is your resume in this league. Yeah, you like stats and you like to put up good stats, but at the end of the day, you're judged off your film. You're judged
Mm-hmm.
off your effort. You're judged how consistent you are in between those white lines. So there's free agents on this team that are playing for another job. Think of a guy like Debo Samuel. He has no guaranteed money on his contract after this. We've all known that this is effectively a contract year. So guys like Debo, who haven't been having a good year, probably aren't looking at these next 6 games like, oh, I'm going to mail it in and hopefully this team gets a better draft pick so they can draft my replacement. Or wait a second, is Ricky my replacement already on the roster? So I agree with you. I don't believe that the thought process at all is tank, especially when they're not mathematically eliminated. But I understand fans' thought processes
Yeah.
because they're looking at their injuries, they're looking at the performance, they're looking at
Mm-hmm.
it all, and
Mm-hmm.
they're saying, we don't have it this season. It's not in the cards. Okay. I think the most common comment I see when we talk about this is, okay, get into the playoffs to be a first round bounce. And I can't even be mad at them, Jason. I
Mm-hmm.
can't, I mean, yeah, how they're playing, how they're executing, the injuries, all the different circumstances that are piling up this season. I get it. I understand the
Mm-hmm.
thought process. I'm of the mindset that, I think it's probably where I, fall back into my former player mindset where
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, it's not over until they're mathematically eliminated.
Mm-hmm.
But I also understand the point of, okay, get in the playoffs to do what? Are they going to actually get hot and go on a run and be like the 9-8 New York Giants and go all the way and go through what was it, the undefeated Patriots,
Patriots.
do the improbable, but that is such a rare outcome, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to count on that. It is a range of outcome, but the percentage chances that the 49ers get into the playoffs, go on a run, win the Super Bowl is probably below 1%.
And let's just do the math, because they're not mathematically eliminated.
Right.
But you probably can only lose one more game at the most, maybe. Because if you lose eight, you're probably eliminated. Obviously, the NFC West isn't going anywhere because, no matter what, when it looks like somebody's going to pull away, they just come right back down. But so when you look at the schedule and you look at how many games remain for the 49ers, the margins are thin. They're paper thin. And
Right.
a Sunday loss could effectively not mathematically eliminate you, but eliminate you. So
Because you have to win out. You have to literally win
mm-hmm.
the
And you still
next
have a
5
matchup with the
games.
Lions. And you still have
Bears,
a matchup with the
Rams,
Lions.
Dolphins, Lions, Cardinals.
So you mean to tell me this? The 49ers lose 2 games, they're eliminated essentially, right? Are they going to win on Sunday? Are they going to beat the Lions? Those are probably 2 scheduled losses. And then you always have that tough game with the Rams. And then Miami's turning it around, so you don't know what that's going to look like. And don't look now. The Bears switched offensive coordinators, and their offense looks competent again, and they have a stingy defense. Now, there is a world, there are percentages, like you said, in the range of outcomes that the 49ers just run the table. They could. But what's the likelihood of it? And again, a loss Sunday effectively puts you in a spot where This is it, man. So
Yeah.
it's less about they're mathematically alive, but they're mathematically eliminated in my mind and heart.
I'm only laughing because it just hurts. It hurts so good.
Well, we have to laugh through the pain.
Exactly. It's just a tough spot to be in, man, because uh, you think back to those 3 division losses and how those 3 division losses have were again not mathematically, but
Mhm,
effectively derailed the season.
mhm,
That if they win those 3 games that they had the lead in fourth quarters and should have come away with, they could be okay not having Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, Brock Purdy, Charvarius Ward, Hargrave, Talanoa against the Green Bay Packers. You can take that loss built
mhm,
in because you've padded your win column enough. But they didn't do
mhm,
that. And so they we knew what it is. Every time they lose, the margins just get thinner and thinner and thinner to the point where they're out of margins. The only reason they're alive is because the NFC West is impressively mid, and
mhm,
that's the reality of the situation. So, um, it's a tough spot to be in. But
mhm.
how did they get into this spot, Jason? What do you think the reasons are? Like, what would you categorize those reasons to be of why the 49ers are seeing so many issues? Like, what would you detail that as?
Ah, man, and that's the funny part is I think there's a rush to just put it all on one thing, but I can point to multiple things, many things. It's a little bit from column A, B, C, and D. Um, let's start. So I wrote an article on Niners Nation. Is this where you wanted to go with this, Brad? You were trying to okay.
I'm
I
setting
wrote an
you up.
article. Go ahead, perfect. I wrote an article on Niners Nation, and it's literally 5 options of what people believe is the biggest contributor to this disappointing start. And it's injuries, coaching, offense, defense, special teams. Okay. So special teams, we can knock this out pretty quickly. It's abhorrent. It's the 32nd unit. Nick Wagner has them at minus 32.35 expected points added as a special teams unit. That is 32nd in the league. That's how bad they've been. Okay, so we can toss that one out and just do that, real quick. Coaching. This is the conversation. Okay. Oh, thanks, Jesse. There he is. What's up, buddy? Um, the thing is this coaching. I am, big Kyle Shanahan defender, right? Everybody knows me for that. But I can stand right in front of you and say that I believe that this is Kyle's worst year as a coach for the 49ers.
Mhm.
Um, does it mean that, he needs to be fired? No. But I'm not above criticizing him. And here's my thought process. Kyle, for many years, even when the team was winning, is rigid and stubborn at times and sticks with too many things that because he trusts you, he won't try another player because they have some juice. Let me give you an example. And I tried to break this down kind of on bully ball as well too. And I'm going to try to use the same exact example. If Chris Conley knows exactly where Kyle Shanahan wants him to be, and they throw it past to Chris Conley and he catches it and he gets tackled. Kyle's like, thank you for being in the right spot. But he didn't give you anything extra other than him just thinking about the game the way that you think about it and where he wants you to be. But what if you're not as confident that Ricky Pearsall will be there, but Ricky Pearsall has far more upside to make a play after the catch and have more wiggle and get by somebody. But because you trust Chris Conley, and you don't fully trust Ricky Pearsall, you put in a player who is trustworthy, does what you say, but doesn't give you any added juice. And this is the rigid and stubborn part about I believe in this. This is what you need to do. I like again, if you're not on board, if I don't fully trust you, then I'm not going to put you out there. And that part is hard to stomach. It was
Yep.
easier to stomach in years past when you were winning. But now this year, it's become something that is right here in front of your face. One, that. Two, the overhauling of the defensive system. Again, like you do it again. You bring in Nick Sorensen. It was a late addition, and then you know what? I'll be frank. It's just not working right now. And the 49ers have the 11th ranked defense in the NFL. How? I don't know. But I say there's just these critical times when the defense breaks down, and it feels like there's times for more creativity, and it's not there. So that's another thing that you have to put on coaching. Execution. We have to put that on coaching. Who else do we go to when the guys are not executing? And lastly, with coaching, this team looks worn down. Like they look worn down, they look slow, they have no juice. And unfortunately, I think it's because you've been climbing this mountain for 3 straight years. You've been playing games into January for 3 straight years. And now it's kind of taking its toll based on the injuries, based on the way you're playing. It's not a Super Bowl letdown, it's a 3-year letdown of this team mentally climbing this ladder, getting there. And then it kind of breaks when you look at last year and you say, that was our best shot ever at it. We would never have a better look at it. When you go into the season last year and you have some of the best injury luck we've ever seen for the 49ers, not having impact players go down. And unfortunately, it unravels in the playoffs when Dre Greenlaw, tears his Achilles and Debo gets hurt and George Kittle gets hurt and they leave the game for a little bit. Feliciano gets hurt. It all happened in the Super Bowl, but you'll never get that sort of injury luck again. Did we expect it to regress to the mean? Yes, but this isn't regression. This is literally the best injury luck to the worst. And we had to expect it coming. And now it's come, but it's come in a way that it's too hard to overcome. So I don't know if that's coaching. That kind of just leans into the injuries thing. Injuries is a part of the formula, but at the end of the day, regardless of who's available, they're not executing. They don't look fast. They look like a team that's like running in quicksand. They look a day late and $1 short every single game in almost every facet. And that has to be looked at coaching. I don't want Kyle Shanahan gone, but I am not above criticizing Kyle Shanahan this season. And I think that right now, this is his worst season as the 49ers coach. Based on, although you have to find a way to glue this thing together. You're the coach.
To get on the topic of coaching, we're in the same boat. We're both in the boat of thinking that firing Kyle is not a good idea for the future of the franchise. However, I also agree that this is Kyle's worst year from an offensive play caller, from overall game manager. The 3 fourth quarter losses in division just are sickening, like literally sickening. I think I've told you this many times that I realized I had fourth quarter PTSD, 10-point fourth quarter PTSD week 3 against the Rams, watching them kick that field goal to go up by 10. And I'm like, they're inside the 5. And I'm like, what are we doing? Like, you got to score here just based on everything that we've seen. So there was a lot of things that haven't gone well this year, and I do think are contributed to Kyle Shanahan. I mean, when you look at the average time between offensive plays, the 49ers rank dead last. It takes them the longest time in the NFL to get the ball off. And to me, that speaks to the lethargic nature of this offense. It's just slow motion. There's no creativity. There's no urgency. It's like they're treading through mud. It's hard to watch.
That, and Kyle wants to shorten the game as much as he can and keep his defense off the field because he's not trusting them to get stops. He's trying to shorten the game and trying to lengthen these drives.
He's not playing to win. He's playing to not lose, and he invites the loss. And that is, again, you mentioned his rigidity. That's my biggest thing with him too. Is I think it's a psychological thing. I think he is, to give him grace, he has to analyze ranges of outcomes. He has to. Every negative outcome, every positive outcome, he has to process it like a supercomputer to make sure that he can pick and pull the right levers at the right time. But I just know from how we've evaluated Kyle, he's a very negative thinker. He already fundamentally believes the worst is going to happen. And I think after it's happened to him now in 3 Super Bowls, if we're being honest, NFC Championship games, huge moments, 3 times this year. It just feels like he needs to, and again, this is a psychoanalysis. This is outside looking in. I'm just speaking my thoughts on this, and
Yeah.
it's not necessarily true. Um, but I just feel like he breathes this into this
Mhm.
team, and I think they're so exhausted that they're like,
Yeah.
all right, that's who we are. Like, I think you've had your Kittles, ultra positive. Like, we've heard Kyle joke about how positive Kittle is all the time. Like, oh, you need to stop being so positive. It's like, this is how these guys compartmentalize the insane pressure of this game
Mhm.
by thinking positively, by only trying to think of the positive outcomes. But Kyle's always like, nope, you have to think about the negative outcome. He had mentioned it against the Bucks in week 10. He was telling them this is going to be a bad game. And he said they were all looking at him like crazy. Like, what do you, the game hasn't even been played. You're already telling us it's going to be a bad game. And then sure enough, they have a bad game. And his response is, see, I told you. And it's like, it feels like an invitation of that. It feels
Mhm.
like you're inviting that into your team and energy. And we talk about energy and vibes all the time. It just feels like I don't know. Again, I've been psychoanalyzing Kyle since 2017. So these are things that I've been thinking about for a long time. But I just feel like that plays into the rigidity, that plays into not being as fluid and going with the flow and, trying to change things up, going tempo, doing all these different types of things. What are you looking at?
Dude, the Alabama A&M kid, the university just came out and said he's alive. What is going on? I know that has nothing to do with the
Seriously?
49ers, but yeah, seriously.
Well, we talked
Whatever.
about it on this stream.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, my bad. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off. I'm like, what?
I was
How does a
done.
guy go from
That's
how does
wild.
a guy go from being dead to being alive? What are you talking about, man?
That sounds like social media to me.
Oh God. All right.
But anyways, the point
Yeah.
being is I think part of that is the exhaustion of of all of these players going through these situations and continually finding themselves on the wrong side of it. You know what I'm saying? So I just think that um, that's my big critique of Kyle is I think he could loosen up a little bit, try
I,
to speak and breathe a little bit more positivity and optimism into. I get it. He's
mhm.
an old school. His dad was like that. He's just like his dad. It's an old school mentality, and I just feel like everyone needs to grow. Everyone needs to evolve, and I think that's one area where he could evolve is breathe positivity and uplifting guys more than he does.
I
But
think
that again, that's an outside perspective. I'm not in
right.
that building. So
That's
I don't
that's what
know.
I was about to say. So I think on the
Yeah.
outside, Kyle wants to give you this calm demeanor, cold, calculating, but we don't know what they say to each other in the locker room, right? Like I think that's the part that
Right. We can
is a little.
only
It's
the
like
things that we see on the sideline and
or the
how
press
he explains
conference.
things. Yeah.
Yeah. So it would be irresponsible to surmise what is being said in that locker room. We can only
Correct.
go off what we see, right? Like, what we see in
Exactly.
press
And that's
conferences,
what I wanted to be clear that this is
mhm,
just a feeling that I have of
mhm.
outside looking in.
Yeah. And again, when we went into the season, we looked at this season as okay, this is the last dance for this group. And the wear and tear of all of those playoff runs is showing right now. And I think we are going to see a lot of roster turnover, going into the next year. The names on the back are going to look a lot different. But if you want me to inject some optimism into what's going on, moving forward, the 49ers smashed this draft class. They knocked it out of the park. That's one, right? And again, no matter where you land, you're still going to have a first round pick. And you don't have to hit on as many players as you did in this draft next year to fill the spots. But what's important is this: you have to, if you have a higher draft pick, you have to build again from the trenches. Again, you've done a great job in the secondary. You've identified wide receivers that we haven't been able to see yet. Garendo's been fine, but you get yourself Malik Mustafa, Bernardo Green. You get yourself a starting Pro Bowl caliber right guard. Good start. Very good start. And you're filling in holes that this year where these guys weren't supposed to be playing, but you're getting early returns. Now, this year, you've got to get back. If the best edge rusher is available or the best defensive tackle, whoever it is, best defensive lineman is on the board, go get him. Best offensive lineman on the board that's worthy of that pick, go get him. Now it's time, if you get a higher pick, you built from the outside in, get back to that this year, because when you look at the way that this team is failing, it's failing in the trenches. And obviously, not having Nick Bosa doesn't help, but when you bargain bin dive on these defensive linemen, but you don't have the studs around them to just make them rotational guys and you start relying on them, that's when you're going to find yourself in a position of Jordan Elliott playing, who's actually got a concussion, so he might not even play. Malik Collins has been fine. Leonard Floyd's been whatever, he's been up and down. You lose Hargrave, you don't have Bosa. Those moves in 2021, when you get Omenihu and Arden Key and those guys, they work because Bosa, Armstead, all these other guys that you have that are anchors. When you don't have them and you bargain bin dive, that's when you find yourself at the end of games with no closers and no real pressure up front. And the offensive line, for all intents and purposes, obviously Trent Williams didn't play. Jalen Moore was the best offensive lineman on the field on Sunday. And that's a surprise. Pooney had his worst game of the season. Jake Brendel's been awful. Banks, this is Banks last year. They're going to let someone else pay him. And then McKivitz has been McKivitz. The funniest part is the two tackles were the best linemen on the field on Sunday. But you have to build now from the inside out. I want to see defensive linemen. I want to see an edge rusher. I want to see an offensive lineman. It has to start there. It has to start there because so many of the offensive failings are at the feet of either not having enough talent on either side of the ball or just guys not doing their job. And you've got to get younger in those spots right there.
Yeah, it's hard to disagree with a lot that you said because I've quietly been pointing out the regression between both, Banks and, with Brendel, he started out really bad. And then he was able to kind of get it into gear, and then he's kind of back to regression again. Those guys just, unfortunately, they're huge contributors to why the offensive line isn't playing consistently. And that I always talk about my biggest measure of success for O linemen is consistency, and they're not consistent. They're not consistent on their run angles. They're not consistent in pass protection. They're consistently missing blocks, which again, doesn't matter if all four of the guys are doing what they're supposed to do. You add tight end, you add the fullback, all these guys doing their job. If one guy on the interior misses their block, the whole play is blown up. Mm-hmm. And it's just not only this year, it's been consistent for the last 3 years. They just got away with it in previous years because they had Christian McCaffrey. Christian McCaffrey did so many things for that offensive line over these past 2 years that I've seen on tape, play in, play out. He can squeeze through a hole that big. Obviously, he's taken a bit of a step back because he's coming back from injury, but he really put a Band-Aid on a lot of what was happening with the offensive line interior these last 2 years. And now we're seeing it full force. Like it's becoming a consistent issue. And I agree. I would not be upset if every single pick in this upcoming draft was defensive line or offensive line. Just you have to swing until you hit. And I think I love the Ricky Pearsall pick now, but in reality, it was like, man, feels like a great opportunity to go trenches. D-line, O-line, go somewhere. Just like, again, you don't want to just pick that position just because. I don't think, when we got to that point at 31, there weren't the best options available. But at the end of the day, it didn't seem like they were going any other position than wide receiver the whole time. So at the end of the day, the offensive line isn't good enough. And they have struggled with the interior group for a while now. It's just like I said, there's been a Band-Aid on it. And Pooney has been a great addition, and he's a guy that you can absolutely build around. If you bring back Colton McKivitz, I won't be super excited, but I won't be
Oh,
mad.
oh, you're so diplomatic. I love that. You know what
I'll
people
be
want you to
even.
say.
I know. I'll be even. Like but I've been consistent with
Yeah.
my interpretation of what McKivitz is, and he has proven me right every time of
Mhm,
the way. You have to expect 2 to 3 pressures. He's going to be able to be serviceable
mhm,
for 95% of the game. You just have to live with that 5% where it's a little ugly. But listen, if you're playing good ball, that you can live with that 5%. And again,
mhm,
that's body of work consistency. So, and he's cheap. He's very cost effective, and that makes him a value, but he's not the best right tackle by any stretch of the imagination. But you could still be serviceable with those guys while you get a center, get a left guard, bring back Trent, and draft a tackle that you don't have to plug and play as a rookie,
mhm.
ruin his mind, early on, give him a year to develop, and then, hey, if McKivitz struggles, all right, you got someone to slide right in there. And so, but I think center's huge. Like
Yeah.
center's, I think the biggest problem right now.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, is it any worse with anybody else on this roster? Like, is Nick
You might
Sakel
want to try Nick Sakel.
is Nick Sakel worse? I mean,
They're
at
very
this point,
they're very similar. Like
mhm,
they aren't power centers. They're not going to
mhm,
dig guys out. They have efficiencies in pass blocking. They're smart. They can pick stunts up, and they can get to second level. They're not going to dig out these zero techs. They're going to struggle in that world. But I mean, at what point are you going to get the same level of play out of Zakel and get?
mhm,
Let's see what Zakel's got, because
and maybe,
that
yeah.
that could have an impact on who you target in free agency. Could have an impact on who you draft. So at a certain point, they're going to have to see what Zakel is.
Which brings us back to the original point. At what point do you realize this season isn't going the way that we want? Let's see what we got. Drake Nugent, come on up. Let's see, right? Like, because we have to evaluate this roster. The 49ers haven't had this issue for 3 years. They get to the draft process later than everybody because they play in one of the two last games of the season.
Right.
You can get a jump start on this because you do need to retool and you do need to hit on this draft class as well, too. Last season's draft class, I said, was the most imperative to continue winning. This year, I'll double down and say this one is now. And no matter where you are, as long as you have a first round pick, you've got to hit it out of the park. It's time to see what you have, because it almost has the writing on the wall of who's going to be gone next season, who's likely to be gone, who's somebody that you can maneuver around. Like, I think, you and I both agree. I don't think Aaron Banks is going to be here. I just have a sneaky feeling that the 49ers are going to just insert Spencer Burford into his spot and not address that and just say, hey, now you can go there, which might work. He actually looked pretty good when he was
I
over
think
there.
he'll compete for that. I think
Yeah.
he should
Hmm.
compete for that
Hmm.
for sure.
So, but you have to find a way to evaluate this roster because what guys are at the top, right? The 49ers are very top heavy. You know exactly what they give you. I think George Kittle's here to stay. He's absolutely earned that, deserved that. Fred Warner, Nick Bosa, those are your cornerstones. Obviously, now Demo is one of your cornerstone guys. But you got to figure out what everybody else is at this point, what this roster is, who's on this roster to stay, right? Like, practice, you can get a feeling, and I'm sure they have some sort of semblance of what they believe the rest of the guys on this team are. But you never know. You might just give a guy an opportunity, and it goes back to the tanking thing. If you're a guy like Nick Sakel and you get a shot, are you going to go out there and say, man, I got to make sure I try to help lose this game so we can get a good draft pick? Or are you going to say, no, this is my shot, and
You gotta play your ass off.
I'm gonna show out? So, like, that's the thing, right? Is we kind of know where guys are. You have Ayuk as your guy going forward. We just hope that he can recover from the injury. Seems like Pearsall is a part of, obviously, whatever their thought process is going forward. All those other guys you kind of have an idea of, I think we both believe that Charvarius Ward's not going to be on this team next season. He's going to sign somewhere else. So you're running with Lenore and Renardo Green. I think we have to have a frank discussion about Jair Brown, who I think the world of as a person, and I think he's a
We
great
both
player.
do.
But I think he's a great person, but he's just not been good this season. He's a fine young man, well spoken. Spoke to him, spoke to his mother. He's got everything that you need up here, but it's just not translating. And he's looked worse this season with more opportunities. So there's a lot of questions that you have, and a lot of things that you need to fix. So you have to evaluate all these guys, and you have to start to do it now. Again, you're not going to pull the plug on the season because you are 1.5 games out.
Right.
Out fine. But at what point do you kind of just look around? And you know what, Brad? I'm going to throw this out at you too. And I think that we should have taken this as the sign of what the 49ers thought about this team was the trade deadline. And let me explain. Most of the time at the trade deadline, the 49ers make a move, something that they feel that can help them. And I think when they didn't, we rationalized it by saying they like what they have in the building. And, Pearsall's coming back and McCaffrey's coming back. But what if their inactivity at the deadline was your first sign that they realized there's no one player that we can get that's going to help? There's nothing out there that we have to ride this out. And let's keep our picks because we're going to need all of them. What if that was the writing on the wall that we missed because we believed, hey, McCaffrey's coming back. Pearsall's going to play more. You can get some returning guys and sell those as the deadline acquisitions. But maybe this team evaluated everything during the bye week and went right to the trade deadline and said, there's nothing out there that we can, and there's no one out there that's going to fix what's going on in this building right now. We just have to kind of ride this thing out.
I think it's a little bit of both. I think we know that there's going to be a lot of free agents next year, and they have to have a youth movement. Like they really need to continue to build through the draft because as we've talked about, those 2021, 2022 drafts just haunt the 49ers to this day. Your Danny Grays, your Ty Davis Prices. I mean, your Cameron Latu's, just brutal picks that have not done anything for you when you needed them to. And we're not going to harp on past mistakes, but part of the thought process moving forward is, all right, maybe we shouldn't get rid of our picks, and we'll be hopeful that some guys can step up. I mean, what they made that one trade right for Khalil
Davis, yes.
Yeah. So they made that move to get some depth, but that's all that was. It was straight depth move.
Yeah.
It's just, and they've just been taking hits on defense. They just don't have enough bodies. They don't have enough juice. Obviously, Fred Warner's playing hurt. Devondre Campbell hasn't been what we needed him to be, and Isaac Yiadom hasn't been what we needed him to be. And so it's been a tough go. So regarding the lack of moves at the trade deadline, I just don't think they wanted to spend. I think they saw guys that were on, would be rental players, and I don't think they wanted to go the rental route. And because, a little bit of both, we just got to see where this year goes, and we need to actually focus on this upcoming draft and free agency because it is a retool. It's like they're resetting the foundation. And so they need all the assets they can get in order to put themselves in a position to be successful if their plan is to pay Brock Purdy and build this team around him. That takes a different thought process of roster construction than what they've done because Brock has been so cheap. Now, if he's your $50-60 million man, that's a completely different ideology of how you got to build your roster. So I think both things are true. I think they're looking at what they have and like, we go get a defensive tackle because we need one. But other than that, we'll see if we can ride it out, And I do think, but to also kind of counter those thought processes, it's like I think they also believed internally they should be 8-2,
Yes.
you know? And so they're
And
like, "Well, we could be 8-2, so we can overcome this. Like we can get after it."
okay, another big issue is that right there, what you just said
Yeah.
is
Woulda,
we're
coulda,
better
shoulda.
than our record. No, you're not. And I despise that
They would
mentality.
if they won those games, but they didn't.
Right. I I I despise that mentality because it comes off arrogant. It comes off pointing to the past as like, yeah, we've done it before. Let's just do it again. No, you're not. I had a discussion with one of my friends today, and he's a Bengals fan. And he says, we're good. And I said, really? You're 4-7 and sitting in a top 10 pick. Your record is what you say it is. He goes, oh, do you watch the games? I said, it's literally my job to watch football. Yes, I watch the games. I was like, you're talented. You have a good coach. You have a good quarterback. Your season isn't going well. You are what your record is. And this team continuously goes to the microphone and says, we're still this good. No, you're not. No, you're not. And I despise that discussion. I despise that mindset where we have urgency. It's right in front of us. And no, you don't. Everything looks hard. Offense, defense, specialty, everything looks difficult. What running out to the field for the coin toss looks difficult. It's arrogant. It's delusional. And it's really just you kind of saying like, oh, well, remember a few years ago or last year when we were really good? I don't care. And neither does the NFL. Results-driven business. Right now, the results, let's say I'm a salesman at a job and my sales were booming through the roof last year and I got a big raise. And this year, my sales are bad. And my boss pulls me into the office and he wants to have a discussion about my performance. And I say, remember last year when I did so well? You gave me that brand new parking spot. You gave me that raise. You gave me that extra vacation time. What is that boss supposed to say to you? That was then. This is now. This is who you are. And I despise the fact that they sit there and they go, I know a microphone hates to see a 49er coming towards it. I despise the thought process of, yes, we're still better than this team. You're not in the same class as the Philadelphia Eagles. You're not in the same class as the Detroit Lions. It is not close. And that mindset seems to be all through the locker room, aside for a few players who continue to say the right things. Fred Warner says all the right things. George Kittle is who he is. I get that. But man, when you have a bad game and you're like, yeah, we're fine. We got this. You're not. And it's time for you to do some self-reflecting. The hardest thing to be aware of is self. When you have done something over and over and over again, and you think you're that guy, but you don't want to make any changes, it's literally like going to a therapist and lying to the therapist and not talking about what you're really supposed to be talking about. It's top down, systematically arrogant. That's it. Bottom line.
You said top down. Starts with Kyle, doesn't it?
It does. And look, righting the ship, steadying the ship, being calm, right? That's one thing. But when the message continues after you've just gotten your doors blown off, and I actually respect Kyle for saying it doesn't matter who's playing, we got our asses kicked. Okay, good first step. Very good first step.
Honestly, sorry to cut you off. I think if Kyle just came out and said, I have not been good this year. I have not done the best job preparing my team and getting my guys ready to play. I think people would actually give him more grace than what's happening right now.
And today, a reporter asked him how he would grade himself. And he said, that's for you to do. I don't grade myself. I'm the same guy that I've been since I got here. You can look at that one or two ways. Good thing or bad thing. That's up for you. It's in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
But
I know it's in line with what we're talking about.
right. So
Right.
that's the part. There's so many factors to why this season is going the way that it goes. But when you win, you get the praise. When you
Yeah.
lose, you get the blame. And that's the position of the head coach and the quarterback. It happens all the time, right? Like you have to stand in the box and do that. But the lack of accountability, the lack of self-awareness of this team is maddening. And I understand why other teams look at the 49ers and say, I can't stand them sometimes, right? Like when these guys speak. Like when Debo's like, yeah, we're still the best in the NFC. Where? When? Not this year. But because you did it last year, you have the confidence to keep saying it, even though the results don't bear that out. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's a double-edged sword because kind of like what we were talking about earlier, you have to have confidence
Of
even
course,
amidst playing
quiet confidence is fine.
like Dookie. Like I'm sorry to throw that word out there. I don't know
Is
why
that a
that
bad
came to my
word?
mind. No, just I've been hanging around my
Language,
kids too much.
Bradley. Language.
But just like the thought process of like they have to have irrational confidence. They have to have an irrational belief in themselves. But there also, I think, is a fine line when if we're talking about speaking to the fan base and speaking to the media, there's nothing more that I have been able to witness than fans appreciating accountability. Remember when Jimmy Garoppolo would come up to the podium and fans would lose their mind when he would have a stinker and he would say, we.
Alexa, turn off. Sorry.
Fans would go crazy. They would lose their mind that Jimmy just wouldn't say, I made a bad pass. I threw a bad pass. I think one of the reasons why people are endeared to Brock Purdy is because he will come up there and say, it's my fault. I made the wrong pass. I made the wrong read. Like even if we don't even know if that is the case, and it could be a wide receiver running the wrong, it was my bad. It was on me. It's all
That's what a
my
leader
fault.
does. That's what a leader does.
And everyone's like, good job, Brock.
Yeah.
Like no one's
Right,
like, see, Brock, it's all your
what
fault. They're like, okay, we can respect that. We can give you grace for owning your issues. And that's it.
what's funny is even when he's outward lying, like he said on the Ronnie Bell drop, I have to give him a better ball. You respect it because he's trying to protect his guy.
You know exactly what he's doing. Yeah, he's protecting Ronnie Bell, who's gone through the
Right.
ringer.
Right. So that lying is acceptable. Lying and saying that you're the best team in the NFC or you have the best, like that is unacceptable. Selective lying. Selective lying is the name of the game, and that's what we're going to call it.
Outwardly being delusionally optimistic is unacceptable.
Right. Lying to protect one of your guys is fine, but do not pour water on my head and tell me it's raining. Please. That is something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I hear you. Should they Brock? I apologize. I missed this earlier, so I can't even ask for
I'm sure it's should they pay Brock? I think that's what everybody. So look, to wrap this up, because I think all the things that we were talking about, like what's the biggest thing, it starts with coaching and then it's a trickle-down effect for everything else. Obviously, the offense has been awful in the red zone. And thank you, George Kittle. You lead the league in red zone receptions and red zone touchdowns. Imagine how anemic this offense would be in the red zone if George Kittle wasn't hooping the way that he has this entire season. The
Well, we
defense
saw
can't
that
get
against the Seattle Seahawks week 11,
right.
what that would look like.
Your defense can't get off the field. And when they try, and Jordan Love was trying his best to throw interceptions in this game, and the 49ers were like, nah, we don't want him. Like, I don't want him. Like, I don't want him. And then the most infuriating thing is the 12-man on the field thing. I have no sympathy for that. And if that happened to the Dallas Cowboys or the Philadelphia Eagles or the Seattle Seahawks, we'd be like, man, those guys suck. You got to start looking at your team that same way. But to put it all together, it's a multitude of things. Injuries are hard to overcome. The coaching hasn't been there. The accountability isn't there. The execution hasn't been there. The team looks slow. All of these things are together. They're all intertwined, right? So let's just put a bow on that. I know what the question is, and everybody's been asking this, right? What do the 49ers do with Brock? I believe, just like many of you, and I am terrified at really what's going on with Brock's shoulder. I'm terrified. He threw one screen pass today Yes, he was limited. And with the 49ers way of describing injuries, how could you not be nervous right now? And
Dude.
unfortunately,
Can we just talk about how they like? We don't have to talk about it. I didn't mean to cut you off, but just
no, you're good.
like it feels like there's always something with injuries. It's not just straightforward, like this is
Mhm.
what it is and this is what we're dealing with. It's like, oh, we're okay. And then reality, it's really not okay.
I cannot wait and for like Brock to be like, my collarbone was broken and my spine broke like at the end of the season. Like it's just like, yeah, just like
And
what?
punctured lung.
Right? Like what? Like how did we get to from that to that?
Kind of like
Um,
what happened with Fred Warner today, finding out he's been playing with a broken ankle.
and even he said I shouldn't have said something. I shouldn't have said that. Like I shouldn't have said that. He goes, but yeah, that's what I'm doing, you know.
But that's how
But
you know he's going through it mentally
yeah, he is. So
to
the
reveal
qu-
that.
the question becomes, Brock has these injuries, and he most likely isn't just going to play next season, right? On his fourth year. Um, what happens now? We all know the going rate right now is $60 million. I think if there's any sort of positive is that maybe the 49ers and Brock can find a middle ground for a Baker Mayfield level contract. Although I believe he's better than Baker Mayfield, even though Baker Mayfield does, fun fact, lead the NFL the last 2 seasons with touchdown passes. Baker Mayfield for the Tampa Bay Bucks. But a $40 million a year deal doesn't kill this team. And not that a 60 would either, but $40 million gives you a lot more flexibility. And then you can really start to get greedy, right? Although you're going to have to make some tough decisions. But the 49ers have to really understand what's going on with his shoulder. And they have to be, here's the word, convicted that his shoulder is going to be fine and then there's not going to be any further issues. I say this. There's any chance that Brock Purdy can go out there and further injure himself, shut it down. But when you're this close to a playoff spot, how can you look your team in the eye? How can you look your fan base in the eye and say, we're going for it? You know, it's a give and take and it's hard. And unfortunately, they can't even get Daniel Jones because Daniel Jones is now Sam Darnold's backup. So, you know, it is what it is with Brock. This is now what the discussion is going to turn into for the rest of the season. And me, I'm just going to bury myself in watching offensive and defensive linemen. I've already been gathering tape. I've already been starting to look. I'm just going to go with, but this discourse is going to go on from now until this thing plays out however it does. And a lot of people are nervous about the whole $60 million thing because of the injuries. You just have to have a firm grasp on what the injury is, but can you trust the 49ers to do that?
It's been an interesting year because what I think Brock Purdy's making under $1 million this year, yet he's being evaluated as if he is a $60
Mhm,
million quarterback. I
mhm,
understand the thought process. But again, it's an interesting dynamic that you have a
mhm.
guy who is paid less than college quarterbacks these days, and but he's evaluated at the highest level, which you have to do when you are getting prepared to pay someone. But it's just an interesting dynamic because I don't know how it's going to play out, dude. I'm based on how we've seen contract negotiations go with the San Francisco 49ers and the improbable of them paying Jimmy Garoppolo after 5 games. It just feels like it's going to be the polar opposite with Brock. Doesn't it? It doesn't just feel like that. Like
Mhm.
they're for whatever reason they felt so convicted to pay Jimmy what they paid him at the time, which made him the highest paid quarterback after 5 games
Highest paid NFL player of all time at that time,
of
by the
all
way.
time. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Obviously, the league has exploded since then,
And every and
but
every contract after just exceeded that. So it's
right,
just funny to point out.
it looks like pennies now, but at
Mhm,
the time, it was a big deal,
mhm.
and now it feels like it doesn't feel like Brock is gonna get that same level of treatment. Would you
Mhm.
say?
Yeah, I look again. The whole Brock evaluation process is just it's insane. You know, again, and we talked about it. It's just easier to bet against the last pick in the draft, a guy with a weak arm and whatever. That's fine. Just let me state for the record. I want Brock to be here. I'm tired of looking for someone else. I'm tired for looking for like this endless cycle of we've got our guy, we're back. Oh, we got to get rid of him. All right, we got our guy, we're back. Well, we got to get rid of him.
Draft Cam Ward.
We got to somebody else. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay. So much of what
That's why we can't have nice things, man.
Right. Ever. It's like the football god said, we're literally going to give you Joe Montana and then Steve Young, and then good luck, guys. And good luck for the rest of your time. Like just trying to find the guy. Cursed. You are now banished by the football gods from finding your guy. What you'll do is you'll be really happy with a quarterback for a few years and then realize, we got to move on. I want this to be done. Again, do I know what's going on with Brock's shoulder? Obviously not. I'm not a doctor. But based on the way the 49ers have misspoke, right? Like I wouldn't be shocked if Brock was just like, my arm is broken and my back is broken. Like at the end of the season, it will just be like, what the hell? I was like, what does that have to do with what does that have to do with a MRI? Like, so it's just it's got to stop. And I would love for it to be Brock because we have seen the heights that this offense can go to. And can it reach that again? I don't know, but you have to retool and figure out all the way through with this draft class and make sure that you give him everything that you can based on your evaluations and whatever the money is and all that stuff. I don't get into the pocket watching thing. It's not my job for salary cap, any of that. I leave that to the much more qualified people who have their jobs on the line doing that. We can only speculate,
you know what our out is, Jason? You know what our natural out of that is? The market is the market. We don't dictate the market.
The going rate. The going rate
is the going rate. Like we don't dictate that. That is based. That's just how contracts work. You measure up yourself against what the other guys are being paid, and you look at what Brock Purdy has done. You look at his resume, and obviously you're going to have to factor in the injury aspect of it. But we're not here to determine, let's pay him 40 or 60. They're going to do all that haggling when they're at the negotiation table, comparing his stats to Dak Prescott, his resume to Dak Prescott, and being like, look, it is what it is. This is what Dak got. That's why the San Francisco 49ers had to pay Brandon Ayuk $30 million because the market is the market. They could have probably got him for significantly less if they did a timing deal like Diamador Lenore, but they didn't do that. And so the market is the market. It exploded, and they had to react instead of being proactive. With the timing of Brock's deal, it is what it is. The market is the market. And he has one of the better resumes in the entire league right now for a 24-year-old quarterback. So
you ready to laugh?
Always.
My good friend, our good friend of the program, friend in real life, Brian Peacock of Locked On 49ers, he's a funny guy. And the Daniel Jones, the Daniel Jones news came out that he's going to be Sam Darnold's backup. And Brian Peacock tweets, this is very tongue-in-cheek, guys. Also, by the way, please don't get mad.
I saw that.
All right. Sets the stage for Sam Darnold reunion with the 49ers in 2025. Daniel Jones staying in Minnesota as J.J. McCarthy bridge, while Brock Purdy gets traded to Bill Belichick's New York Giants. Happy Thanksgiving, everyone. And I tweeted right at it. I was like, what the hell is your problem, man? Like, what
the hell, man?
What the hell, man? Like, look, we have to laugh at stuff like that, again, in this process, I don't think that anybody soured on him in any way or anything like that. I think it just has to boil down to what's this injury, what's the ramifications, how long-term, and Jam 18, man, he's cooking, man. Like, don't sleep on the idea of Kyle still trying to get the one that got away.
Kirko
Chains. Don't sleep on that idea, man.
Is he a free agent, or he would have to trade for him?
They'd have to trade for him. Yeah, they'd have to trade for him. They'd have to trade for him.
His deal looks great now because it's $45
it's guaranteed.
million.
Yeah, and it's guaranteed. And they did draft Penix. Oh God, not this again. Please, just you know how fun the offseason was?
You something crazy is gonna happen this offseason. Like clockwork.
But remember all offseason? Remember when we were like, how fun is this? We have our guy. We don't have to worry about. We don't even talk about the quarterback position.
We can talk about other things.
And
Not anymore.
this conversation starting right now on November 27th, and it's gonna last for a long time. And I think the more information we get is how the conversation changes, and then the informed opinions will change, and you'll figure things out as they go along. But man, right now, like, just please, Brock, stay, man. Don't go anywhere, man. Just keep him, man. It's just I don't even really care about the money. I just want to have a guy. I just want to have a guy for a long time.
Do you feel like the 49ers are in a bit of a purgatory from a totality standpoint of where they are at a crossroads in regards to roster building?
Um,
Because there's so many unknowns.
mhm,
Their top players are getting older, more expensive. They have a ton of free
mhm,
agents. So there's a lot of like they're clearly not thrilled with their defense and probably coaching staff. Like I don't know, it just feels like this offseason they could just straight up go think, reset, and then not like resetting, firing Kyle and getting rid of
mhm.
everything, but like a major retool because I think we've all been anticipating that.
Yeah, the names on the back are going to be far different next year. And I do think another mistake this offseason was believing in your guys and almost like how we play dynasty football
Yep.
when dynasty fantasy when it's time to sell
For the drop off.
before the dip. You buy low, sell high. When you run it back again with a team that's got so much wear and tear, with a bunch of guys that have gone through all these things, and then their play starts to decline. Now you find yourself in a position where you're going to have to start trading guys for pennies on the dollar, as opposed to getting what you could have gotten. And that's a little bit of a misevaluation. Hey, we made the Super Bowl last year. Let's just run it back and bring everybody back. And that's not for me to decide. But if you notice, the Kansas City Chiefs, when L'Jarius Sneed wants to get paid, all right, you got to go. When Tyreek Hill
Tyreek
wants to get
Hill.
paid, all right, you got to go. We're going to retool and we're going to fix this and we're going to go with these things and we're going to bring back guys and we'll bring back Chris Jones. We'll have all these guys. It's understanding, and these are tough decisions. They're not easy. It's understanding the moment where you have to stop continuing the same thing that you've been doing and start to
Yeah.
get in a different way. And that's the part that when you look at some of these other franchises and you're like, how could they let that guy go? How could they let this guy go? It's time. And then you build back up in the draft. And the 49ers have been kicking the can down the road by missing on many draft picks season after season and then holding on to guys just a little bit too long. That's the part that I think is part of the misevaluation of this offseason, with the 49ers just believing and maybe being a little bit arrogant about it, that we'll run it back and we're going to be just as good. And I think that is one of their pitfalls this season as well too.
Yeah, it's been an unfortunate season, and it's not technically over,
It's not.
even though it feels like they got one toe in
Hey,
that pool.
can I say something positive?
Sure.
The San Francisco 49ers have found their franchise punter. Extend Pat O'Donnell. You know how long it's been since I've seen a punt go really, really far? And I'm just like, man, who's this guy? Hey,
Oh,
franchise
yeah.
punter, man. Franchise punter, man. You found him on the streets. What
Yeah.
a what a novel idea.
Oh, all you can do is laugh just so you don't cry,
Yeah,
man. It's a
yeah,
crazy time,
yeah.
around these parts, but it is what it is.
It
You
is.
know, has us has us thinking about the future. Big Tone says a draft of just straight hogs and dogs. Okay.
He
Okay. He
just
wants the
meant
big
because we're
big boys up front
right.
and
He was talking offensive
those
line, defensive line.
dogs.
Let's get back to it. The team needs closers again on defense. They need guys that can get to the quarterback that are not named Nick Bosa. And you have to prioritize. It's all about the trenches, baby, and you got to get back there. But yeah, it's that's all I've been really looking at. Like everybody that I've been asking that's been helping me with college tape, it's just all of offensive linemen and defensive linemen, just because I think that that's got to be the direction moving forward, man. You look at this and you say next year, Fred Warner's ankle is not going to be fractured. Dre Greenlaw should be recovered from his Achilles. You feel good about your secondary. You can fill that out with depth. You've got to get back to those two spots because you feel a little bit better about wide receiver and everything. You got to figure out the running back position moving forward. It's really just about offensive line and defensive line in this draft.
Yeah, this draft season, I am yet again not going to take the 49ers philosophy of, oh, we can just get offensive line wherever, whenever. I'm over that. Like, I get it. That's what they've lived by. They've found success that way. I think it's fundamentally time to abandon that and build the best offensive line that you can possibly have and give your quarterback a fighting chance every time he drops back and not having to work around getting his offensive lineman pushed into his lap or consistently having to run for his life because they can't hold up beyond 2 seconds. So they need a blue chipper at center and they need someone to match Pooney on the other side and have a actually like strive to have an elite interior offensive line just for once. Like I would love that. And that's been my theory. I've told you for the longest time, and I'm not changing. I feel more vindicated than ever. That is just, you got to have a good offensive line. Like what's like, anyways, anything else you want to touch on before we get out of here?
You want to do a little bit of fantasy football, or you got to get out of here?
We'll do a couple fantasy and then we'll get out.
Yeah.
Any fantasy football questions, feel free to drop them in the chat. I think we got
everybody's trying to get into the playoffs, and remember, guys, we're eating good this weekend. Not just Thanksgiving. 3 games tomorrow, a game on Friday, full slate Sunday, Monday Night Football. This is a dream week. But everybody's trying to get into their playoffs again. Happy Thanksgiving to all you guys. Thank you guys for tuning in and listening to us, complain about this team and everything as well too. But, it is what it is. And, we got to keep it a buck as we can. But also, if you guys are looking for the article that I wrote about what's the biggest factor this season, check it out on NinersNation.com. Vote on the poll. Let us know what you thought in the comments. And, let me know what you think of the cases that I laid out for all 5 positions. Here we go.
Oh, speaking of poll really quickly, I threw up a poll of the question that we asked. What would you rather have, sneak into the playoffs or top 10 draft pick? We have 140 votes. 52% have picked top 10 draft pick. 48% say sneak into the playoffs. Pretty much on par with the Instagram poll as well. So
again, the good news is the 49ers don't have to change what they're doing if you want to get a top 10 pick. You're just 1 game out right now at this point. You can just keep trying. Just keep trying to play games and see what happens.
Throwback says Brad's not going to mention it. I already talked about how Brendel has not been good this year. So
yeah, we talked about that.
Hendrick says, do I start Goff or Tua?
Yeah, the 38th ranked center in graded center in the NFL, by the way, and there's only 32 teams. That fine.
It's not even to the point where he's like not playing good. He's just not good.
It's hashtag not good. Goff or Tua. So Goff against the Bears, and Tua against who we got? Let me see. I gotta look at the matchup. Let me see, because I have Tyreek Hill and he's killing me. Oh, so you gotta pick one of your Thursday quarterbacks. Miami against Green Bay is going to be the most fun game. If you guys are looking for a time to nap, please do it during the Giants and Cowboys game. Goff or Tua? I think you got to go with Goff, because if it's in Green Bay, it's going to be cold, and you know how Tua is. I
didn't play that well when they went to, what was it, the Chiefs in the playoffs when it was freezing that one time?
When it's free, I mean, it doesn't even have to be freezing. It just has to be like 40 degrees. So yeah, I would say Goff. I think you got to stick with the hot offense, man. And I think, the Bears have a very good defense and a very good secondary as well too. So, but the Lions are just rolling, man. Go with what you got going with you. Tua's been very good lately because he's been force feeding Jonnu Smith. By the way, if Jonnu Smith is available in any of your leagues, please pick him up and start him. He is absolutely worth it. If you're looking for a bargain basement, tight end that you didn't have to invest in, Jonnu Smith is going crazy right now. I would say Goff though in this one. I just don't like Tua in outdoor cold game at night. Even if it's not going to be that cold, you still got to roll with the guy that's been going crazy.
Yeah, Goff has been kind of inconsistent from a fantasy standpoint, but I'm probably rolling Goff too.
Mm-hmm.
Sit Love and start Tua.
So, or Love or Tua, he's saying.
Okay.
Man. Jordan Love.
That feels like
I don't
a wash
know.
almost.
Yeah, and I don't want to throw accusations around, but I think that Jordan Love has been betting on himself over on interceptions almost every game. Because he's trying. He tried to throw.
I bet a Love interception, and my boys failed me. They didn't give it to me.
And the other times, and what's crazy is remember draft crush for many 49er fans, Christian Watson. Thank God he's hashtag not good at football, because that game would have really got out of hand if he catches that walk-in touchdown. But
yeah,
I think I'd probably go Love just because it's in Green Bay, but I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, it feels like a wash. I take your logic as well. Just take the home guy.
Yeah.
In that environment. Who does she flex? Pollard, Williams, Thomas.
Pollard's been incredible, man, in Tennessee. That's crazy. Let me take a look at their matchup, Cynthia. And by Jay Williams, I'm assuming you mean Javonte. But Javonte is like, oh, man, it might be Jover for my guy. He's got a tough match. Or Jameson Williams?
It could be. I don't know.
Tennessee. Let me see, because I know I have some Will Levis shares at Washington. Brian Thomas and the Jags. What's the format? What's the format? If the format is PPR, I might lean Brian Thomas, but I think I'm just gonna go with Pollard, man. He's been so good. And the Titans have been playing much better. It's Jameson Williams. Okay, so Jameson Williams, Brian Thomas, or Pollard. The problem with Jameson Williams is that he's so boomer bust. You feel really bad about like when you look on your bench and he's like gone off for 2 70-yard catches and he only had 2 catches, but it's too volatile for my liking. Brian Thomas is a target magnet for Trevor Lawrence, but Pollard's been so good, man. He was great against the Texans this past week, and he's kind of rolling, and Tyjae Spears is dealing with an injury. I'd probably roll Pollard.
Oh, if Spears is dealing with an injury, then I probably
he was out last week. He was out last week. I don't know if he's going to be back this week. I don't think I have him. I drafted him, but I don't think I have. I dropped him because
Pollard and Thomas have pretty similar kind of inconsistencies where they're kind of boomer bust these last couple weeks. So, but I do think Spears if he's out, I think that does kind of tilt it in his direction.
He got a limited practice in today. He got a limited practice in today. All right, so based on
94% of the snaps last week against
Houston. Pollard went crazy last week. And they do play Washington. Washington's defense is like, looking at your Thanksgiving plate. We got yams here, we got steak, we got mashed potatoes, we got turkey, like that. But if it's PPR, then I probably lean Brian Thomas, but I have no problem playing Pollard even if Spears is there. He's just been too effective lately for them to just get him off the field.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with that logic. Looking through,
it is PPR. Okay, it is PPR.
How are you doing in your fantasy leagues? Are you staying above water? And I would say majority of them.
I got bounced in Scott Fishbowl. In my first playoff run. I needed 25 from Dobbins and Mark Andrews, and Dobbins left that game with an injury, and I lost by 5 points. So yeah, I got bounced from. Hey, made my first Scott Fishbowl playoff, but it is what it is. I was not happy at first. I thought I had no shot at all, and then I looked up because their formula is different. In the Scott Fishbowl playoffs, it's an it's a score of what your season average is per game plus what you get, and they come up with a formula of a point differential that you have to get over. And I thought I was out because I thought it was just like win-lose matchup. But then I looked up and I thought I had a shot, and then Dobbins left the game, and that was the end of it. Mark Andrews tried. He definitely tried. He scored that touchdown. It was great, but yeah, it sucked to get bounced in there. In my home league, 6-6, man. I started 5-1. Good God, man, it got ugly quick. And in another league, and this is funny because I think, again, it's all for fun. It's a little bit more of a casual league. Someone dropped George Kittle when he was ruled out against the Seattle Seahawks, and I had the number 2. Oh, there he is.
I think
It's time to go.
Yeah.
Nah, it's cool. It's cool. Don't even trip. But yeah, long story short, somebody dropped George Kittle. And I had number 2 waiver priority. The person that was in front of me had like Trey McBride, so I knew he wasn't going to go after him. I got George Kittle off waivers, and I was able to just put him into the lineup with Tyreek Hill, Mike Evans, James Conner, Devon Achane, Jalen Hurts, and I still lost.
Oh.
I hate fantasy
well, you gotta love to play with players like that, man.
Yeah, man.
Dropping George Kittle.
I was looking at the thing, and I'm just like, oh, who's there? And I'm like, George Kittle? What the hell? But hey,
someone in one of my dynasty leagues dropped Bryce Young, and I swooped him up.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that either. Especially
in
super
dynasty,
leagues.
It's not redraft. It's not redraft.
Right.
It was dynasty, and I was like,
and
swoop. No one even picked him up. I saw him late too.
Right, in Superflex leagues, you hoard quarterbacks.
The Superflex league, I needed another quarterback, and I was, Goff and Love were my quarterbacks, and I needed someone else, and I was like, oh, all right.
Well, nobody was more down bad than I in one Superflex league. Josh Allen and Kirk Cousins both on bye. And it's Superflex, so you got to play 2 QBs. I started. I'm going to puke. Cutlets and Brandon Allen.
Oh. Ooh.
And guess what?
Ooh. Did they get you negative points?
No. And guess what? I won.
Nice.
Yeah. So I was like, hey, he's a quarterback. I got to pick him up. Hey, I mean, and Allen would have been fine if guys would have caught passes and stuff. Like, he was all right, man.
Yeah, he was okay. He wasn't their main issue.
He's a backup.
All right. He's Brandon Allen.
All right.
But
that's it.
Yeah. State of the franchise is we don't know what the state of the franchise is. It's we're trying to figure it out.
Here's the state of the franchise. Enjoy your time with your family. Please do not let this team stress you out. Enjoy your time with your family. Check in on your people. Call people. Talk to people. This is, life is fragile. Things can happen at any moment. Just check in on your people and go and spend time with your family. Enjoy your food. Enjoy your time. We don't know how many years we're here. We don't know how many years we're going to have our loved ones. And there's so many people that wish they could be with their loved ones that they just can't for different reasons. So yeah, just make sure you check in on your people and just have some fun.
Yeah, happy Thanksgiving to you guys. He says give thanks for a top 10 pick. Hey, regardless,
I'm thankful for George Kittle.
Yeah, me too. Regardless of what's going to happen this year, draft season's going to be lit. I know that for sure. So we're gonna have a lot of draft content. But again, shout out to all you guys. Hopefully, you guys do have a great time with your families. Have a happy Thanksgiving. And hey, I'm thankful that the 49ers don't play on Thanksgiving, so we can just relax and chill.
Just one more question. What's your favorite condiment, Brad?
Condiment like mayonnaise, mustard, relish.
So what's that second one?
Mayonnaise, mustard.
No. The second one. Say
mustard.
It. Do it and say it the right way.
So I'm gonna sound like a boomer here. I don't really understand the mustard thing. I haven't listened to any of Kendrick's stuff.
And I'm done with you, gang. I'm done with you, gang. Right now, Kendrick Lamar is doing more for the Bay than the San Francisco 49ers. God,
that's hilarious.
The whole chat gets it.
I don't get it. I'm like, it's in his song. He's
It's DJ Mustard is the one who produced it. So he's like, is Mustard like what's the one thing that Mustard goes on the beat, ho?
Oh, okay. Yeah, no,
You're killing me, Brad. Is
I haven't
this
listened
because of your J. Cole allegiance?
It's because of my J. Cole allegiance. No, I don't.
J. Cole is a
I make 49ers content for 15 hours a day.
That's true.
I'm like, I don't care.
I'll say this, and I'll leave it on this. Kendrick Lamar turned Drake into a content creator and turned J. Cole into a podcaster.
He did.
Good night, folks. I'll be here all night.
All right, guys. Make sure you go like and sub to both channels. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Sounds like I need to go listen to some whatever his name is. I almost said J. Cole. I'm just gonna end the stream now. Bye. That's Jason Aponte. I'm Brad Graham. We're gonna get into it all right now.